Welcome everyone to the Watchlist, Australia's newest investor webinar series for ASX listed companies to pitch to real investors and be added to their watch lists. What we try to do is find companies that we'd love to have you add to your watch list, but today we've got two companies that I am very, very confident are on your watch list based on the number of registrants and the number of questions we're already receiving. We do look to get you introduced to those companies so you can ask more questions of them, hear the stories directly. Both of these companies have a lot going on. Both of these companies have been in the news recently. And as I said, I'm confident they are on your watch list. The two cracking lithium stories we're going to hear from today are Azure Minerals, ASX code AEDST, and Green Technology Metals, ASX code GT1. Each company will present, then management will be on hand to answer any questions you have. So make sure you have questions ready of management and submit them using the Q&A button on your screen. Okay, let's get started. Our first presenter is Luke Cox, CEO of Green Technology Metals. Green Technology Metals is a North American focused lithium exploration and development business operating its 100% owned Ontario lithium projects in Ontario, and today came out with some cracking news that no doubt Luke will talk you through. Luke, over to you.
Morning, everyone. So my name is Luke Cox. I'm the CEO of Green Technology Metals. So I'm going to whisk you off to Canada, and this is where we're building a vertically integrated lithium business. So specifically in Ontario, which we'll discuss in more detail in the presentation. So next slide. So we've just ramped up to 24 million tonnes of resources, and that's just across our first two projects. Now, the first project's called Seymour, which is our flagship, and our second project's called Root, which will be our longer-term feed source. Now, we have 10 projects in total. We've got 56,000 hectares. And what we're looking to do is build that lithium supply chain, but really starting with Seymour. Next slide. So like any good team, you need a good board. John Young, our chairman, he founded Pilgrim Minerals many years ago. That's a lithium household name. We've got Cam Henry. He's just recently become an exec director. So he's in the office now every day. He's actually off to Canada to go and spend some more time with the team. Pat Murphy, MD of AMCI, a big company investing in startups and various commodities. Then Rob Longley, an experienced geologist. So right there at the board, you've got guys that have had hands-on experience in starting mining operations. Next slide. So on the ground, you've got myself, Luke Cox. I started life as a geo, worked my way up the ranks, technical services in the mines, then became a mine manager. Now I've worked for the likes of Evolution, Mineral Resources at Wodgina. And also got Matt, he's on the ground there, COO, he's heading up the operations. And we're starting to build a real presence in Canada. We have an office in Toronto, which is going to become more of the corporate office. And then we have an office in Thunder Bay, which is our operations office. And Thunder Bay is where our hub is. And around Thunder Bay, where our assets are located. On the left-hand side, so one thing to note, it's got a really strong registry. So more recently, LGES, they build batteries. They jumped on the registry. Invested in the business. This is their first investment in a mining company. They looked at GT1 just because of the board, because of the team and our location in North America and the big thematic that LG are getting involved in building that vertical integration. Also, we have Primero, household name in building lithium processing plants. Lithium Americas Corp, one of the biggest North American lithium players. They're on our registry as well. And obviously AMCI, who have been with us since the start. Next slide. So what's this all about? How are we going to achieve this? So what we're looking to do is build into the thematic in Ontario. What they're trying to do is build a vertically integrated business also. They've invested 25 billion already in the downstream component. That's the battery manufacturing with Stellantis, LG Energy Solutions and PowerCo. So PowerCo is part of VW. They're all building their plants right there in Ontario. Now, they've also put aside money for the critical mineral strategy, 1.5 billion. And really what that's to do is to start getting investment in the upstream portion of this business, specifically in conversion plants. So that's converting the concentrates that we'll produce into a chemical that can go into the battery. So as you can see, Ontario are building this vertical integration, and that's what we're feeding into. Next slide. So on the left-hand side, this is what GT1 are looking to do. We're building the resources organically. We just released a mineral resource update for the Root Bay project. Those tons will keep expanding. We've just got rigs kicking off at Seymour, which is the flagship. So we'll build a resource base organically, but also there's a lot of opportunity for inorganic growth around Thunder Bay. Now we'll produce a concentrate on site, and then that concentrate will go to a lithium conversion facility in Thunder Bay. And then we will feed the downstream players. As you can see, we've already partnered up with downstream players like LG Energy Solutions, and we're already talking to all the other players in Ontario. Next slide. So this is a big project. How's GT1 going to achieve this? So we're going to break it up into bite-sized chunks. The first chunk, if you like, which is stage 1, let's get the Seymour project up and running. Now, we have a team in Thunder Bay in the operations office specialising in permitting and First Nation engagement. Now, we have designed and engineered this project for the minimum amount of permitting required. So, we talk about a zero runoff site. So that's one permit that we don't need. We talk about using less chemicals or no chemicals, and that's why we've gone to a dense media separation only. We also talk about a small footprint and also really keeping down the front end of the processing facility below 1.5 million tonnes, which is also a hurdle that if you go above it, you go to federal permitting. If you keep below it, then you go into provincial permitting, which expedites your permitting. We're also reaching out to the First Nations where we work. This is their land. We're coming in and we're asking to start this operation up, and we're engaging and take them along the journey with us. So there'll be financial gain for everyone on this project. We'll create a concentrate on site, and then that will go through. And the first feed will go into Energy Solutions. But whilst that's happening, we'll also start and kick off the lithium conversion facility in Thunder Bay. So all the planning has already started, the design work. We're looking at the property and how we need to permit that. And also, really, this isn't just GT1. We're going to bring in a partner, a strategic partner that has done this already. We're not going to try and reinvent the wheel. So these are people that are already producing lithium chemicals, the likes in South Korea and Japan. And we've already started those negotiations, and they're very keen to jump onto this thematic. And really, the stage 3 is bringing on that long-term supply chain from the Root project and really the other 10 projects that we have in the pipeline. Next slide. So how do we get into production so soon? Well, all of our projects are located within the infrastructure hub around Thunder Bay. We don't have to build roads. They're already there. We don't have to build airports. There's airports at both sites. There's police departments, schools, there's fueling depots, everything that we need to start an operation. And that's at Seymour and the Root project. Now, that also shows there's a red marker in the middle there. That's the Trans-Canadian Railway line. That actually runs through our site. We also have the Wate power line runs through the site at Root. So as you can see, we're not a big capital cost for infrastructure. The infrastructure is already there, and that's absolutely critical to getting first into production. And as I say, Thunder Bay, 150,000 people, there's a workforce there. There's universities, there's sites there that we're looking at for the hydroxide plant. Thunder Bay used to be the old Detroit of the North, massive paper industry. And what they did, when everyone went digital, the paper industry collapsed. So looking to reinvigorate and reinvent Thunder Bay. And the government's pumping a lot of money into this critical mineral strategy because they know Thunder Bay is the hub of the Northwest, where we're finding the lithium, nickel, and other minerals required for the batteries. Next slide. So this is what the timeline looks like. We're just about to release our preliminary economic assessment. That's the equivalent to a scoping study in Oz. So that's going to come out in November. We will quickly move to a DFS because we're looking to get into production in the end of 2025. So that is first concentrate at the first project, Seymour, and getting an SC 5.5 concentrate into the market. Whilst that's happening, we're still moving along with a hydroxide facility in Thunder Bay, and we will move to a PFS. And we're looking for first production of chemicals into the business by 2028. And whilst that's all going along, the rigs won't stop. We'll continue drilling. We'll organically grow our resource base. As I say, we've got 24 million tonnes. We've got enough feed for 15 years, which is enough feed to kick off this whole strategy. Next slide. As I say, you know, the scoping studies coming out, you know, GT1, we've engaged with Nordmin, Englobe, Entech, Primero. You know, Primero have been through this process numerous times. They're highly experienced in the lithium processing side, so it's great. They're actually got members of staff located in our office over there in Toronto. You know, we're deeply rooted with Primero, and they're really driving this project, not only from the feasibility, but all the test work that's required for the concentrates and the lithium conversion facility. Next slide. So stage one, as I say, let's get the Eastern Hub up and running. We've already got 10 million tonnes. That's enough to kick this off. Open pit, simple DMS, get concentrate into the market. Next slide. You know, feed sources on the left-hand side there, Seymour project. That's where we got our first million tonnes. We actually just picked up a new property called Junior Lake. There are 3 known occurrences prior to picking this one up that had LCT, spodumene-bearing pegmatites. We flew some geophysics over that area, and then we sent the geos over. We picked up a main structure, and along that structure, we picked up numerous pegmatites. Now, with that, we went straight back to the business where we optioned it, and we went straight into a purchase agreement. That happened last month. You know, this is a prime lithium real estate, all in the Greenstone Belt, all within trucking distance of the central concentrator at Seymour. So you'll see some additional news come out. And the bottom right-hand picture there is, you know, what we've done to keep this simple from permitting. We said, look, you know, we're just going to talk about a simple open pit. As you can see on the picture in the bottom right, that's like a purple blob. That's potential underground operation, but we have not included that in our resources. We have not included that in our permits. That is some of your longer term feed sources. Next slide. As we talk about, you know, how do you permit something so quickly? You've got to do it correctly. You know, Ontario, you know, they've got 100 years worth of mining. They've got a very well-developed mines department, very similar to Australia, which has made it really easy for us. You know, so we talk about a low footprint, a very small footprint, exactly what we've done in that picture there. We talk about zero runoff, using no chemicals. We do not intersect any rivers or water bodies. That is something that's absolutely huge in Canada, because once you intersect or touch a water body, you go into a federal permitting approval process, because you start having to measure the aquatic fauna and flora, which is quite a protracted process. Next slide. As you can see, Primero have been hard at work. All the design work has now been done for Seymour. This is a DMS-only modularized concentrator. You know, we've done all the cut and fills, everything's been done. Next slide. Test work. We've done all of the life of mine concentrator test work. As you can see, we're getting 72% recovery. Like all studies, you know, that's some of your best results, but in the scoping study, you know, we'll use 65% recovery, because you've got to show, you know, what things would look like when you get into operation. Now, the reason for high recoveries at Seymour is very coarse grained spodumene and great grade. And it's just one single tabular ore body. So we don't have high dilution. So there's no real requirement for ore sorting or anything like that, which also minimizes the amount of permits that you need. Next slide. Stage 2, let's get this conversion facility up and running. We have spent 18 months on several properties in Thunder Bay. This is one of the properties. They're old paper mill industries. As you can see, there's been some rock breaking going on there with piles of the old foundations. We'll get that site cleaned up, and then we'll go into, I guess, a clean slate to start building the hydroxide plant. Into that site already, we have power, we have gas, we have heavy haulage roads, we have rail infrastructure with rail sidings, we have sewerage. So everything that you need to build a plant. Next slide. Once again, Primero been busy. The green bottom right-hand box, the green sheds, that is stage 1. That is just one train, you know, producing between 20 and 24,000 tonnes of lithium hydroxide. And then the grey boxes are the stage 2, where we'll ramp up production in due course. And as I say, everything that we need is already there on that site. Next slide. Long-term feed source, stage 3. So this is where we talk about the Western Hub. You know, every couple of months, we're building up that resource, and there's still more to come. So next slide. Top right-hand picture on the left-hand side, we hit Macomb. We quickly proved up 4.5 million tonnes of spodumene. We knew there was an outcrop at an area called Root Bay. It was a couple of meters wide. So we went over there. The geos quickly mapped it and said, right, we need to drop both rigs onto this and start drilling immediately. So we did. Initially, we proved up 8 million tonnes. And for the scoping study, we need to go and do infill drilling, which we've just completed. Normally, when you do infill drill, sometimes the grade drops off or the tonnes. In this aspect, the tonnes went up, which is absolutely, which really proves that this deposit, can expand in terms of a long strike and down dip. So next slide. And this is it. So once again, we haven't included any underground. This is all of our mapping and all of our pit optimizations are in pit only. So as you can see, we did 3 deeper holes, and this thing keeps on going. The grade gets better, and it gets, the thickness of the pegmatites continue, which is definitely potential underground material. And when you look at these diagrams and compare them to other lithium projects, you get convergence of all these pegmatites into, I guess, what you call like a mother lode or a feeder source that then bifurcates as it comes to surface. So even the stuff that's bifurcated to surface, they're thick pegmatites, easy to mine, good grade, coarse spodumene. That would be easy open pits, and then we go into the underground operation. Next slide. Once again, all the design work has been done, and that's all Primero's work, obviously working in our office. Next slide. So just wrapping this up, further drilling at Root Bay, we've got 2 rigs there right now, drilling a long strike and to depth. We've got all the test work for the DMS coming out and all the conversion test work. We're going to release our integrated PEA. So just with that PEA, there'll be 2 MPV numbers on there. Just firstly for the Seymour project and concentrator, just to give you a taste of what a standalone operation would look like, creating a spodumene concentrate. And then we'll give you an MPV for the entire project. So that's the Seymour mine, the Root mine, and the lithium conversion facility in Thunder Bay. And then we'll be kicking off drilling over at Junior, which is that project we just picked up. There'll be updates on the MREs. We also, we talk about a conversions facility and bringing in a partner that's done it before, has a big balance sheet and is interested to get into the North American market and start producing chemicals. All those, I guess, meetings have already occurred. The board have been up in, say, South Korea and Japan, and it's, overwhelming the interest in the longer term feed sources. And then we'll, as I say, there'll be these financial decisions to go for the Seymour project, and ultimately, a concentrate out of Seymour on the flagship. So that's the last slide. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Luke. Great presentation. Cash. How much cash you got?
Yeah, so cash in bank is 17 million.
So more than enough to get you through the next phase?
Yeah, that's right. So that'll get us into the new year. One thing we are talking to is like we've already done a binding offtake agreement with LG Energy Solutions. Now they'll take 25% of our concentrate or LCE units for a chemical once we get to that stage. So there's still 75% of our offtake available. Now we're holding that for potential strategic partners.
How important is that to hold?
Yeah, absolutely. So like we've talked to a lot of we've pretty much talked to all of the OEMs. They're prepared to take all of our offtake right now, but they haven't built lithium conversion plants before. They're not interested in stumping up the capital for a conversion plant. So what we're looking at now is we need a chemical business that will come in with a good balance sheet, and I guess those businesses, their concern is where's the feed going to come from? So that's where GT1 comes in. We supply the we supply the concentrates into the conversion plant, which minimizes their risk, and they know the feed's coming in, and then they're quite keen to build the conversion facility. And we'll be like a minority holder in that, whereas the strategic partner will be the majority holder.
I remember talking to you probably a couple of years ago, soon after you listed, and I was amazed and impressed by the amount of discussion you gave around permitting, how you'd assembled a permitting team. Permitting was a big focus. And at the time, I remember asking you, why would an exploration company be so focused on permitting? How important was it to have that focus on permitting back then?
Oh, absolutely. So, I specialise, me and my team, we specialise in mine startup. So I wouldn't say we're your classic explorers, running around with magnifying glasses and kicking rocks. Everyone in my team, we're mine developers. Like I started life in the mines, starting up operations specifically around Australia and some time in Africa. And the thing is, when you hit the ground, get the drill rig spinning. You need to start building your resources up, but also start your permitting immediately. So there's incompressible parts of your permitting. So the first one is baseline study. You have to do a minimum of 3 years of baselining. So if you haven't started that now, add 3 years onto anyone's timeline.
And in terms of what's happening in North America around support for projects of this type, particularly in the critical minerals space, is there access to I know you're not yet at the financing question, but at the financing stage just yet. I know you're probably right in the middle of those discussions, but is there cheaper debt available because of the amount of government support that is out there?
Oh, absolutely. So 18 months ago, this is how soon we started this, we knew it was going to, we're really driving into operations and production. So 18 months ago, we went to the government department. It's called the Strategic Innovation Fund. They put aside 1.5 billion for the critical mineral strategy. Now, we've been in numerous meetings with that fund. They said to us, look, great project, great jurisdiction. The team you've got on, you're proven that you can get this, these operations up and running. But what we need you to do, we need you to join forces with the other businesses that are invested in Ontario. And one of those was LGES. So we talked to LG, we formed that offtake agreement because LG are already building their battery plant in Ontario. And they said, well, if you're going to create the concentrates and LG is going to take the materials that you create, well, that's a match made in heaven, because that makes our job easier in terms of funding. So here's the critical mineral strategy. There's 1.5 million tons. Once you release your scoping study, then we'll jump to the next step of negotiations for funding for the hydroxide facility. So you can see that all the pieces are starting to fall into place in the next couple of weeks.
How busy is the next, not just couple of weeks, but the next couple of months going to be? There's a lot of big bits of news coming. As you talk on the slide, there's the what's next, but what are the critical things that shareholders should be focused on?
Yeah, so absolutely critical. We've got the mineral resource out. So one big thing with the mineral resource, when you release a scoping study, a percentage of your resource has to be within the indicated category, JORC category. So it just means you can convert that into a reserve using modifying factors. So we've been busy drilling away at the Root project. Then we're going to move over to the Seymour project. There'll be exploration work there. But it's absolutely critical that we get all these line items in place as we move into stage. So watch out for the scoping study. It will clearly show that this is an economic project, and our timelines are still good to go. But we haven't changed these timelines since day one.
There's a cracking question here that you're probably not going to like, but I'm going to ask it anyway. There's clearly a lot of M&A occurring for lithium companies that are at or nearing production, and even a bit further down the curve, both in North America, South America, now Australia. How closely do you think you're being watched?
Yeah, we are I lost count of how many NDAs I've signed. But yeah, we watch very closely. But we do have a strategy in place. Should someone try and take us over, we are looking to go in production. We have the team in place. We're working away with the permitting and the First Nations to get this one up and running. to really maximize value. Because once you get that first concentrate and you get, then you get the funding for the downstream conversion facility, that's where the real worth of GT1 comes in. Your NPV goes through the roof.
Do you take notice of how other lithium companies have stared down M&A and have actually chosen to push ahead with production because they can see the value?
Oh, absolutely. The whole reason they're trying to take you over early is because they see you as an accretive value opportunity. They can see, look, if we jump in now just before they go to production, GT1's done all the hard work, and we're just going to come in and swoop the project. I mean, you always think about shareholder value, but there's definitely significant value into going and really developing this project into vertical integration, rather than just drilling this project out and selling it off.
Clearly, a team that's been focused on production from day one. As I said, when you and I sat down a couple of years ago, it was all about permitting. It was all about getting study work and all those things in place. So clearly focused on production. A team that's focused on production, a team that's done it before. Exciting times for GT1 and its shareholders. We look forward to following with interest. Luke, thanks for your time.
All right, thanks, David. Thank you, everyone.
I'd now like to introduce Tony Rivera, Managing Director of Azure Minerals. Azure has embarked on an accelerated growth strategy to rapidly advance the company's multi-commodity battery metals rich Andover project in Western Australia. Clearly on a lot of watch lists, and there's a lot of questions coming through. I'll let Tony jump straight into it, and we'll get to the questions as soon as we can. Tony, thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks, David, and thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to present to you the Azure Minerals story and an update on the Andover lithium project. And as it notes there on the title, we are in the process of advancing from exploration through to the development stage. The exploration is having some cracking good results, and we have commenced some of the component studies of the initial scoping study, which we expect to be out towards the end of next year. So the project is advancing very, very quickly. Just as a bit of a background scenario, is we're looking here at a drone shot of part of the Andover project area. It's located in the West Pilbara region of Western Australia. So we're looking at low rolling hills, not much in the way of vegetation, and lots of outcrops. So exploration in this area is very traditional, straightforward, boots on the ground, geologists out there walking the ground, mapping the rocks and taking samples. And over the 3 years that we've been operating on the Andover project, we've identified, the exploration geologists have identified numerous outcropping occurrences of nickel and copper sulfide mineralisation over the first couple of years, and now more recently identified abundant outcropping pegmatites containing significant quantities of spodumene, which is the preferred lithium mineral, and follow-up sampling has returned some very high lithium grades from those pegmatites. So that's the initial style of exploration, and from there on, we just move straight into the drilling. Next slide, please. The area that we're operating on is native title country owned by the Ngarluma people. We acknowledge their ownership, and I thank them for their cooperation and consent, because without those, we would not be able to operate our exploration programs on the project area. So very, very big thank you to the Ngarluma people. Next slide, please. So we're really looking at the upside potential of the Andover project. It is looking like it's going to be one of the best, one of the largest lithium exploration projects globally. We have released what we call an exploration target, which is a defined ASX term. It has to be defined in a range. So the range that we've put out there, based upon the exploration data we had up until about the end of July, was 100 to 240 million tonnes at a grade of between 1 and 1.5% lithium. Bearing in mind that this is a conceptual target, and it has to be proved up with drilling. So in that respect, we've embarked on a very large-scale drilling program. We've got over 100,000 metres planned, and to date we've completed, I think, around about 57,000 metres of drilling to date. So we expect to have that drilling continuing all the way through the rest of this year and well into next year as well. And the maiden mineral resource should be ready for release publicly in the first quarter of next year. We've also, in terms of the development, we have commenced the metallurgical test work that's underway. We were able to put out the preliminary results for one of the holes last week, and I'll talk a little bit about the metallurgy later on. And we do expect all of those component studies to be wrapped up towards the end of next year and a scoping study released to the market around about that time. Next slide, please. So corporately, you can see there the directors and the management side of things. The important things to note are on the right-hand side under the key projects. Andover project is a joint venture. It's 60% owned by Azure. So we bought that 60% for about $4 million worth of shares from the Creasy Group. And Mark Creasy has retained that 40% interest. He's free carried through to the final decision to mine. So we own 60% of the project. On the back of that ownership, SQM approached us late last year and early this year, completed a buy-in into the company, whereby they bought 20% of the company for $20 million, which was a significant uplift to the valuation of the company at that stage. And Mark Creasy owns around about 13% of the company, and also the Deutsche Balaton Delphi German investment funds own a combined about 10.8%. We've recently completed a significant capital raising, and SQM contributed pro rata to maintain their 19.99%, as did Mark Creasy to retain his 13.2%. Next slide, please. So looking at the financials, we've got about 445 million shares on issue at the moment, with about 16 million options out there, which are all well in the money. With a share price today of around about $2.50, we've got a market cap of a bit over $1.1 billion. So the company is now a very large company. 12 months ago, with a market cap of $50 or $60 million and half a dozen employees at most, we were very much a junior company. We are now a company that would, just in terms of our size, potentially be in the top 300 ASX listed companies. And we've got a much larger workforce. We've got well over 20 geologists working for us now. We're in the process of employing specialists in the other fields as well. So resource geologists, mine geologists, mining engineers, metallurgists are all currently in the process of being onboarded. And the program that we're looking at implementing with those hires is to take the project all the way through from an exploration stage through development and in towards the production decision. As I mentioned earlier, we've just completed a capital raising, which is both a share placement and also an SPP to existing shareholders. And we've currently got over $130 million in the bank. So the company is incredibly well cashed up. We've got enough financial resources now to complete not only the resource drill out, but also scoping study and also the PFS, which we expect to be underway in 2025. No debt, so the company's in a very, very strong position. Next slide, please. One of the great benefits of this particular project is its location. It's in the West Pilbara region of Western Australia. So it is definitely a tier 1 low risk mining jurisdiction. To the south of us, we've got Rio Tinto's iron ore operating mines. To the north of us offshore, we've got Woodside and Chevron oil and gas facilities. Onshore, there's LNG processing facilities and export hubs there. Just off to the left-hand side of that image, you've got the Dampier salt flats. So this is a heavily industrialised area. There is a lot of infrastructure. You're looking at a 2-hour plane flight from Perth into Karratha. Half an hour drive along the Northwest Coastal Highway through the town of Roebourne gets us into our project area, where there's a bunch of roads and tracks that spiderweb across the project area. So we've got great access into that 108 square kilometre Andover project area. We've got potable water supply running up through there from south to north, which is the pale blue line that you can see on there. We're currently tapped into that and using that water supply for all of our drilling and other needs. We've got high voltage power lines running right through the middle of the project area, gas pipelines. It's about a 45-minute drive to the port of Dampier, off to the left-hand side there, which is a commercial multi-user port, which is utilised for export of bulk commodities. So you could not get a better located project than Andover to develop and operate a mining and processing operation. We'll have the next slide, please. So zooming in onto the Andover project area itself, as I mentioned, it's 108 square kilometres, made up of 3 granted exploration licences, which are shown outlined in blue there. The town of Roebourne is just a couple of kilometres to the north of the project area. That's where we're based. So we have an office there. We've got sample processing facilities in place. There is a commercial mining village in town, so all of our people, geologists and field assistants and other technical employees are all based out of Roebourne and operate from there. That's probably a 10 or 15 minute drive along the Northwest Coastal Highway to get into our target areas where we're currently drilling. The pegmatite swarm is shown there as those red shapes. You can see it's a triangular wedge bounded by 2 major crustal tapping fault zones. That's about 9 kilometres east-west by up to 5 kilometres north-south. And we're currently very, very busy in their drilling at the moment. So that 100,000 metre drilling program that we commenced back in March has just been accelerating. And as we add more rigs into it, we've now got 4 drill rigs drilling in target area number 1, which is 1 RC rig and 3 diamond rigs. We've got 3 diamond rigs in target area number 3 right now, and we've got another 2 drill rigs that are mobilising to site as we speak and should be on site and operating within the next 7 days or so. So things are very busy there. We're going to have 9 drill rigs operating between now and the end of the year. And as I mentioned earlier, we've completed over 57,000 metres of diamond and RC drilling. And we expect that we'll probably be around about 80 to 90,000 metres drilled by Christmas. And then we're just going to keep on drilling all of next year. And we will just be looking to continue drilling and expanding the resources, particularly the one that we're putting out in the first quarter of next year. So the 3 target areas where we've been working up till now are shown on there, known as target areas 1, 2 and 3. Target area number 1, the next slide please. Target area number 1 is shown here, is zoomed in. It's a zone of stacked pegmatites that strike southwest to northeast, dipping towards the northwest. This particular zone of pegmatites is over 2 kilometres long. And there are numerous pegmatites, all of which we've drilled, all of those which we have drilled contain spodumene mineralisation with significant lithium grades. The largest of the pegmatites is the one that's designated AP11/AP10. That is actually a single pegmatite there that's over 1,500 metres long. And over a significant strike length, it's over 100 metres in width as well. So the volume potential for the AP1011 pegmatite is simply enormous. It remains open along strike, both southwest and northeast, and at depth as well. Now, we've drilled down to 400 metres vertically below surface. The pegmatite is still open and well mineralised and of substantial width as well. So that AP10, AP11 pegmatite is going to make up probably a large majority of our initial mineral resource that we're going to be putting out in the first quarter of next year. And as I mentioned earlier, we've still got 4 drill rigs drilling in there, focused very much on extending those that AP1110 pegmatite, both along strike and down dip. And we are continuing to hit visual mineralisation, and there'll be a lot more drill results being announced on that as we go forward. We have the next slide, please. Remarkably, that AP1011 pegmatite has got numerous drill intersections that are well over 100 metres in intersection width. And as you can see on there, there's 8 on there at the moment, which are all over 100 metres in intersection width. And of those, 4 of them are well over 100 metres in true width as well. And we're continuing to hit 60 to 80 to 100 metre wide intersections containing visual mineralisation as we speak. It would be remiss of me not to mention the fact that these 100 metre plus wide intersections are something that is not seen in any other lithium deposit, hard rock lithium deposit in Western Australia. In some of the other projects, you might get 1 or 2 or maybe 300 metre wide intersections, but to be hitting over 800 metre wide intersections of mineralisation in this one deposit is quite remarkable, and it does augur well for the overall size potential of these particular pegmatites. Have the next slide, please. And we're looking at target area number 3. I will just briefly mention we did drill a number of holes at target area number 2. We've identified the pegmatites up there. They're actually in a geologically complex setting. The widths and the grades of them were quite erratic. So after drilling 29 holes into that target area number 2, we moved the rig down to target area number 3. We immediately hit lots of really good looking mineralisation in these pegmatites. We mobilised the other 2 rigs down there now. So we've got 3 rigs operating there, and there'll be more coming in over the next week or so. And there's 6 pegmatites that are stacked on top of each other. Once again, it's extending in a southwest to northeast direction, dipping towards the northwest. They outcrop significantly over the area, and detailed mapping and sampling through that area has hit a lot of, has returned a lot of very high grade lithium results. So we're talking 2, 3, 4% Li2O in that outcrop sampling. And what we're seeing in the drill holes, in the diamond drill holes, visually is replicating what we see at surface with the amount of spodumene in both outcrop and in the drill core. Have the next slide, please. So here's a couple of photographs of 2 intersections from hole 285, which is from the AP4 pegmatite. It's about a 35-metre true width in this area in both the drill holes that we put through that pegmatite. The white minerals that you can see in those pegmatites are almost all spodumene. So these pegmatites here are very highly enriched in spodumene, and when we would expect that there would be returning significant lithium grades from the assaying. The other minerals in there, the grey minerals, are quartz and a couple of minor mafic minerals as well. So what we're seeing here in these particular pegmatites is very strong along strike mineralisation, now extending well over 700 metres. The true widths are looking around about 35 metres true width in all of the holes that we've put through the AP4 pegmatite, and we have hit mineralisation in the other stacked pegmatites as well. So this particular area has now become a high priority for us, and we are mobilising more drill rigs into the area. Have the next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, we have completed a very small amount of metallurgical test work. We put 3 bulk samples from 3 different drill holes into the laboratory. We announced last week the results from the first of those holes. It was probably a little preliminary to put those out, but we were obligated to do so because we had to put out a cleansing statement following the completion of our share placement that we did last week. And when you do a cleansing statement, you have to make sure that all of the material results that the company has are in the market before you do the cleanser. So we had to put out that first drill hole with those networks and results, and fortunately, those results are excellent. You know, we've done a whole of ore flotation to produce a spodumene concentrate that grades, in this particular case, 5.59% lithium with a recovery of over 82%. On the sliding curve, you can see in the graph at the bottom, you can get a 6% spodumene concentrate with recoveries around about 65% as well. So this is just the first hole, and we've got 2 more that are coming to nearing completion in terms of the test work, and we should be able to, in the next couple of weeks or next few weeks, be able to put out the results for all of those other holes. And we're also about to submit about another 12 drill holes in for flotation test work, and that work will probably take 2 to 3 months to complete. And that metallurgical test work program is not something that starts and stops. It's actually going to be ongoing, and we expect that we're going to be continuing metallurgical test work throughout all of the pegmatites that we've drilled and throughout that whole district for quite some months and potentially years ahead of us. Because when you're looking at designing a processing facility for pegmatites, due to the internal variations and complications, you need to have a really strong understanding of the metallurgy, and that's something that we've implemented very early on. So to have a flotation process which does get such high recoveries is very strong indication that that's going to be the modus operandi for operating and recovering the spodumene. We are still continuing to do some dense media separation test work, but at this stage, the initial results were not promising. So the flotation processing looks like it's going to be the way to go, and that's similar to all of the other operating lithium mines in Western Australia, like Pilgangoora, Wodgina, and Greenbushes. we have the next slide, please? So as we advance from being a pure explorer to being a company that's in the development stage, we've got a lot of activities that are ongoing. Obviously, we've got a lot of diamond drilling going on, and that drilling we expect to be continued throughout this year and all of next year as well. Well, initially, we'll look to convert the exploration target to the maiden mineral resource that should be ready in the first quarter of next year. And then we're just going to keep on drilling because most of that maiden mineral resource will be in the inferred category. And what we'll need to do is to get a large proportion of that into the indicated resource category, which means we'll be putting out a mineral resource upgrade around the middle of next year or into the third quarter of next year, so that the majority of the resource is in the indicated category. Plus, we'll also be looking to increase the overall size of the resource through that resource upgrade mid next year. We've got a lot of other components of the scoping study underway at the moment. So metallurgy is just ongoing and will be for months and months ahead of us. Geotechnical studies and mining studies are in progress. Heritage surveys, those heritage baseline studies commenced about 2 years ago when we initially started doing a scoping study for the nickel deposits we identified on the project area. So we're now well over 2 years into that the environmental baseline studies. And we expect that we should be able to complete those to a scoping study standard by mid next year, because that'll be the 3-year mark. And then potentially, as well as that, will meet the standards for our PFS too. Heritage surveys are always ongoing. We've just completed our 8th study and survey over the last week, and we'll be carrying out more surveys throughout the project area as we go through next year and beyond. And the intention is that the scoping study will be completed by the end of next year, with the most of that, the majority of it being on indicator resources, which enables us to convert to ore reserves and can define the program financially by carrying out a financial model on the project. So there is a lot of activity going on. The company is in a very strong position financially to be able to carry this through and complete it all the way through to a DFS stage. Next slide, please. And that's the up-to-date story of Azure Minerals and our Andover project. And it is looking quite remarkable. And it's likely to be one of the very largest lithium projects anywhere in the world. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Cracking presentation. And you're constantly having to update it because there's constantly lots of news coming out that just keeps adding to the story. Yep. You touched on, just stepping back a little bit, you touched on the nickel. There's a quality nickel project sitting there as well, which has really been overshadowed by the lithium opportunity, because originally this project was picked up for nickel. How quickly did the lithium elements of it overtake the nickel project? And when did you know you had a lithium project on your hands?
Well, we had the first 2 years of the project from mid-2020 through to mid-2022. It was very much the focus was on the nickel. But then we observed that there were pegmatites in the area, and then we saw that they contained spodumene and that they returned higher grade lithium numbers as well. So we just started in sort of around the mid-2022 time, moving into a mapping and sampling program. And it was probably 9 months of work, consistent work on the lithium, that we have finally identified that the potential there was absolutely enormous, and it certainly outweighed the potential value of the nickel. Now, there are 2 nickel sulfide deposits there, 6 million tonnes at nearly 1.5% nickel equivalent. That's a very good project in its own right. And we've got a number of other prospects where we've drilled, and we've got nickel sulfide mineralisation, which have yet to be drilled to the resource stage. So this is potentially a nickel project or a nickel mine and processing operation in its own right at some time in the future. But the potential value of the lithium is so enormous that it has certainly overtaken the nickel for the time being. We will continue to do a little bit of work on the nickel as we go, because part of the interesting things that we come across is while we're drilling for lithium in the pegmatites, we are observing nickel sulfide mineralisation in some of the host rocks that surround the pegmatites. So there is potential there to find a lot more nickel, and I guess we'll be having to spend a bit of time and money on that at some stage in the future.
You mentioned right at the beginning the project was acquired from probably one of the most prominent personal exploration people in Mark Creasy and Yandal Investments. And Mark is clearly someone who loves exploration. He loves seeing boots on the ground. He loves seeing drill holes. He's continuing to support the project and the company. How eager is he to see what this could be, and how eager is he when the results are coming through to sort of cast his eye over them to at times maybe say, look, I always thought there was something there. How he loves exploration, and that better than anyone. And how excited is he to see the amount of drilling, the amount of drill rigs, and the results coming through?
Oh, he's very, very excited. Obviously, he was very pleased with the initial success we had in drilling and discovering the nickel sulfide deposits, and because he has a great history himself in terms of discovery of nickel bodies. But for us to then identify and drill out some what are going to be incredibly substantial lithium deposits, this is certainly, it did surprise him, but it certainly has excited him. And he just loves being a part of discovery. He loves rocks, he loves discoveries. And I do talk to him every couple of weeks or so to bring him up to speed with what we're doing, because he's just such a strong supporter of exploration and discovery.
Now, talking about exploration discovery, what's the opportunity outside of TA1, TA2 and TA3, specifically around Seaview and Christus?
Really good. We've carried out a lot of mapping and sampling of other pegmatites, and a lot of that information has been publicly released earlier this year. We've certainly identified a lot of other pegmatites which contain visual spodumene that have returned high-grade lithium results from the assaying. Those results have been announced publicly, but we've yet to go out and drill them, particularly, say, the pegmatites around that Christus deposit. We do know that there was a very large outcropping pegmatite there that has, I can't remember the number of, but quite a lot of samples that returned over 4% lithium from the surface sampling program. We have recently completed a heritage survey over that area, so we're hopeful that we'll be able to have drill rigs going into that area and other areas in the early part of next year with the ongoing exploration program that we've got planned.
Is it a case of not enough drill rigs?
Well, we're going to have 9 drill rigs as of a week or so from now. So there's plenty of drill rigs. We're having to hire plenty more geologists. So this is an incredibly fast-moving exercise. We've had to ramp up, people, equipment, logistics incredibly quickly from the beginning of this year. And remember, we only put the first drill hole in sort of early to mid-March. So here we are probably 6 months later with 9 rigs on site and nearly 100,000 metres of lithium-specific mineralisation or lithium-specific drilling underway. So, yeah, it's quite an amazing transformation of both the company and of the project.
And people who don't know you well or don't know your own history, and I know managing directors generally don't like talking about themselves, but you've built projects before. You know how to do this.
I was part of the team at Jubilee Mines, myself and another geologist, Terry Grammer, with the 2 geologists that found the initial Cosmos nickel deposit, which we've then found nickel Cosmos deeps underneath that and a number of other deposits as well. And obviously Jubilee built Cosmos. That wasn't me. I was part of a team of technical experts who were part of that and who built what was one of the world's great nickel mines. Yes, I've been a part of teams that have done that, and I'm looking forward to being a part of a team that will accelerate and progress Andover through to production as well.
So a number of questions have come through, so I'll get through as many as I can. A good one here. The previous speaker referred to a feeder zone, and LTR found a large feeder zone in their lithium deposit. Is there likely to be such a feeder zone at Andover, and do you have any idea where it could lie in your large tenement area?
At this stage, all of the pegmatites that we've drilled have been individual pegmatites. We've not yet seen any indication that they all join together into a single or multiple feeder zones at depth. And we have only drilled to 400 metres down, and these things like pegmatites and the original source and feeder zones could be at quite significant depth. So at this stage, we've not yet found one.
And what does the current burn rate look like? Cognizant that you do have a lot of cash, but what does the current burn rate look like?
There is currently spending somewhere around about $5 million a month on with so many drill rigs operating. So it's a very busy time, and fortunately, we we were well supported in the most recent capital raising, and with over $130 million in the bank, we're well supplied with cash for a long time ahead.
Now, there's a comment here. Can you comment on the Fe content in concentrate?
Yes, with the initial sample that we released last week, obviously got a great recovery and a very good lithium grade in the spodumene concentrate. Also within that concentrate was an iron grade of about 2%. Now, that's not unusual in the early stages when you've not done a lot of optimization. There are a number of techniques that you can use to remove iron, like magnetic separation, desliming, pre-flotation sulfide removal. Those things are being done at the moment on all of the samples that are currently at the lab. When we did the initial concentrate, the lithium grade went from about 1.4% to 5.6%, which is about a 4 times upgrade. The iron, for some reason, had a 10 times upgrade from 0.2 up to 2%. So we're very confident going forward, and this is not only us, but also our advisors at the metallurgical laboratory, very confident being able to remove most of the iron and getting the final iron grade to well below 1%.
Do you think, as you said, putting out those results was a necessity given the need to cleanse ahead of the issuing of shares? Do you think the market misunderstood those results to some degree? There was clearly fantastic results, but some of it seemed to be misunderstood.
Yeah, I think there's two sorts of people out there. There's the people who know what they're looking at and what they're talking about, which is if you talk to any of the metallurgists at the other lithium companies, they're all telling us great results, excellent results, couldn't do any better, and we don't see any problem with the iron. And then you have the people who don't know better, and they freaked out and panicked. And as it happened, it was a buying opportunity for our shares for a whole bunch of different people who were more confident in the results.
Another similar vein, there's a question here. Can you please comment on target area 2? And do you think the market misunderstood this result?
No, I don't think the market has misunderstood it. I think the market was disappointed with what we got in target area 2, as we were. We have a reasonable understanding as to why the pegmatites are more narrow there, and they don't contain quite the high grade that we see in the other two areas. And that's possibly because the pegmatites are intruding into a different rock type. They're going into a gabbro there, which is a harder, more competent rock, which probably hasn't allowed the pegmatites to intrude quite as easily as the ultramafics have at target areas 1 and 3. However, when you go further to the northeast of target area 2, those same pegmatites go back into ultramafics. And that's an area that we're keen to get in and start drilling on in the future, further to the northeast of target area 2. We've completed the heritage survey. We're waiting on the results from that. And we expect that we'll be drilling up there in the early part of next year.
Now, there are a number of questions that came through previously or came through prior to the presentation around M&A, around activity in the space. Clearly, as I mentioned with Luke previously, anyone that is in the lithium space with a significant project that is focused on production is seeing a lot of interest. Do you field a lot of calls? I know you know materially where there's nothing to announce, but do you field a lot of calls, and is there a lot? Do you get a sense that there's a lot happening in the space and a lot of activity to be had?
Yeah, well, there's definitely a lot of activity in the space at the moment, and we've seen that with the likes of Liontown and Delta and a whole bunch of other lithium companies as well, where some of the major players in both the lithium space and also other larger mining companies are putting a footprint on there and or a foothold onto some of those assets. Azure has fielded a lot of inquiries. There's a lot of inbound interest in what we're doing, particularly because of the potential size. You know, we could be, if we're talking a lithium deposits top 4 or 5 in the world, it attracts the attention of all the major players. But at this stage, you know, we've got SQM as a 20% shareholder, and no others have made a move at this point in time, but time will tell.
And there's a good question here in relation to the nickel projects. As you say, high quality nickel projects that if the lithium wasn't there, you'd be racing ahead developing those. Is there any thought to spinning them off or doing something with them to extract value now so that you can concentrate solely on the lithium?
We looked at that as a possibility in the early days, and there are two deposits, Ridgeline and Andover, which are at the western end of the project area, and they are separate from where the pegmatites are and where the lithium is. And I might just, as an aside, and just to clarify some misconceptions that are out there in the market, when we drilled with a nickel focus at Andover and Ridgeline deposits, we drilled 80,000 metres of diamond drilling in 200 diamond drill holes, and we did not hit a single pegmatite around Ridgeline and Andover. Those pegmatites do not extend anywhere near those lithium deposits. So those two deposits in themselves could probably be spun out at some stage in the future. However, there are some other really good lithium prospects, Seaview, Skyline, the likes of Christas on the eastern side, where there's some incredibly high-grade copper and nickel assays have been returned from outcropping Gossans. And those prospects are probably going to be intimately related, at least geographically, with the pegmatites. And so spinning those out is not really possible. So at this stage, we're just waiting and seeing what happens. If further exploration identifies more nickel deposits, then this might end up being a co-development strategy where both lithium is developed and nickel is developed simultaneously or concurrently.
In terms of T1 drilling, is that infill or extensional?
Both. We've got an RC rig and 2 diamond rigs doing extensional drilling, both to the east and west. And we've got a single diamond rig in the middle at the moment, just doing infill drilling and down dip extensions as well.
You've got a lot of shareholders here, or a lot of groups who clearly want to ask a lot of M&A questions, but I'm not going to put you on the spot and get you into trouble there. The only question I would ask is, obviously, there were discussions with SQM some time ago. Do they remain a supportive shareholder, and do you continue discussions with them around project development as opposed to M&A?
Yes, certainly. SQM did put more than one NBIO on the table, which we announced, I think it was in early August.
Yep.
And we were able to discourage them and from pursuing those offers at that time. But that has not harmed our relationship with SQM in the slightest. They are still very interested in what we're doing. They're very supportive of what we're doing. That can be demonstrated by the fact that they maintained their 19.99% pro rata in the recent capital raising we did by putting in another $26 million or something like that. So SQM is still a very major supporter of Azure, and we have a very strong technical relationship with them.
Last question. You're known as one of the good guys in the industry. Everyone I speak to always tells me that Azure and yourself deserve every success for the amount of effort and work and support that you've given the industry. Do you pinch yourself when you sit there and think, I'm running $1 billion company, I've got 9 drill rigs, I've got $130 million cash at bank, and I'm developing probably one of the biggest lithium projects in the world? Do you pinch yourself and think this is an amazing place to be?
Yes, I do. I've been working as a geologist and a company manager for 40 years now. We've had some really good success along the way with some good discoveries that have become operating mines, and that's been a huge amount of professional satisfaction for me. But to find something like what we've got here with the lithium deposits we're delineating at Andover, to take a company in 9 months from 60 million market cap to 1.2 billion market cap, it's an incredible ride and incredibly satisfying professionally for me. But I'm also really pleased for the team that we've got working here, because deposits of this scale, world-class deposits of this scale, very, very rarely come along. Most geologists will have no experience of that in their entire career. And we've now got geologists working for Azure who are just thoroughly and soaking up the atmosphere of professional success, and good on them, because they're doing a fantastic job.
On that note, we will finish, but Tony, clearly wish you all the best. And as I said, every time we get a presentation, it has to be updated quickly, because there's so much happening with Azure and so much good news coming out of the Andover project. Wish you every success and look forward to following the story, and hope the next 9 months are as fast-paced and exciting as the last 9 months. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, David, and thank you for everyone for tuning in.
As I said in my introduction, the purpose of this webinar series is to give you the opportunity to engage directly with companies that are on your watch list and give you ideas of companies you might want to potentially add. So look at your watch list. Let us know who's there and who you'd like to hear from. Drop a note to Stuart Walters there via email and let us know. We want you to hear from the companies on your watch list or those you're looking to put on your watch list. Thank you, everyone, for participating today. Thanks for firing through cracking questions. Two great companies presenting. Exciting times for both of them. Clearly, a lot of them, or it's clearly they're on a lot of your watch lists based on the number of people participating. Thanks for your time and have a great day. Thanks.